U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is due in Africa on Monday. His three-nation tour includes Kenya, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia and will be focused on counterterrorism. Well, his first meeting will be with Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta. Kerry then heads to Nigeria on Tuesday for talks with President Muhammadu Buhari, and from there the U.S. Secretary of State will travel to Saudi Arabia for Wednesday and Thursday's discussions on the conflict in neighboring Yemen. Kerry last visited the East African region in May 2015 when he visited Somalia. He became the first Secretary of State to set foot in Somalia 2 decades after dead U.S. soldiers were dragged through the streets of Mogadishu. Well, let's now get you some insights into that visit. CCTV's Roy Rittenberg joins us live from Washington. Roy, when we look at the Africa leg of U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's visit, what is likely to be in store for both Kenya and Nigeria?
Well, the U.S. State Department says Kerry's visit to those two countries will largely focus on security issues in the region. That includes the turmoil in South Sudan to the northwest, where rebels have been fighting against government forces with civilians often caught in the middle, and Somalia to the east, the base of al-Shabaab. Now, for more than a decade, Washington has linked the group first to al-Qaeda and then to its war against ISIL. So this is an extension of those efforts. And Kenya, as we know, has been at the center of East African efforts to combat the group in close cooperation with Washington. U.S. airstrikes on Somalia have reportedly taken out dozens of al-Shabaab fighters. Also, both countries are closely watching Somalia's political process with parliamentary and presidential elections expected later this year. But remember, Kerry and Kenyatta don't see eye to eye on every issue. Kerry will likely repeat Washington's assertion that the world's largest refugee camp, Dadaab, should not be shut down. That's despite President Kenyatta's recent pledge to do so. Kerry's also come out against Kenyan plans to forcibly repatriate Somalis living in the country at the camp. Now, meanwhile, in Nigeria, Kerry, is expected to discuss with President Buhari U.S. cooperation in the fight against Boko Haram, another group Washington has linked to ISIL. Now, the U.S. has expressed concern that not enough is being done by the Nigerian military to protect groups displaced by the fighting there. And Kerry is likely to urge Abuja to introduce military reforms. Now, earlier this month, Washington approved nearly $40 million in assistance to the millions of people who have been affected by the fighting. And Kerry is also scheduled to visit Sokoto in the mostly Muslim north, where he'll meet with leaders to discuss Boko Haram and efforts to combat the group. All in all, a very busy few days for Kerry in Africa.
Very few busy days indeed. But Roy, of course, we know that there's just a few months to go before the United States has its own elections. What's the likely lasting impact then of this visit likely to be?
Well, John Kerry, of course, succeeded Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, and many have said that a Clinton presidency would effectively be an extension of President Obama's policies. Kerry is reflecting many of the positions that Clinton herself has supported. So a visit this close to the elections to show that the Obama administration hasn't given up on its efforts in Africa probably serves in Clinton's interests. Well, as for Trump, the Republican contender, he'd likely call for an even heavier-handed counterterrorism campaign, though it's unclear if he'd rely on traditional diplomacy for support. We'll have to see what additional statements he makes and what additional advisors he brings in.
Roy Rittenberg, thank you very much for those insights into John Kerry's visit to the continent, starting, of course, in Kenya tomorrow.